Let's go to the final point. The final point I want to mention here before I finish the video is this. And it brings me to this fantastic book by Friedrich Nietzsche, which is called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Now let me explain to you why I bring up this book and why it's important in terms of analysis of the markets. When Friedrich Nietzsche wrote this book over 100 years ago, I think in the 19th century now, by the way, let me just say this. This book had a profound influence in the world. This is probably one of the most influential, most important books ever written for two reasons. One of the reasons is that Nietzsche invented a word that did not exist in the English dictionary until he wrote it down, which is the word Superman, which in German is written as Übermensch, but Übermensch simply means overman or Superman. By the way, not Clark Kent comic Superman. No, we're talking about a different kind of Superman, which I'll explain to you in a few minutes. So Nietzsche invented this word, Superman or Übermensch, and this book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, was then put into music, a very famous piece of music which you would recognize. It was written by Richard Strauss, which has the same name as the book, by the way, which is called Also sprach Zarathustra. And this music was then put into film, a very famous film called 2001: A Space Odyssey. You might have seen the film, by the way. Now, in this book, again, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche makes a very important point, which is that we human beings tend to follow the herd. You might have heard me mention this, but it's really what Nietzsche tries to drive home is that one of the flaws of us human beings is that we often fall into the trap of trying to be in agreement with everybody else. This is actually very human. It's a very human kind of instinct. We want everybody to agree with us. And, you know, I'm sure you've had this situation when you've had an argument with someone, maybe you've talked to some people, and they don't agree with you, and you're upset about it. And what Nietzsche tries to tell us is, look, this Superman, again, the Übermensch, doesn't need validation or approval from other people. So what Nietzsche is saying here, by the way, let me just say this. Some people have interpreted Nietzsche's Superman as some kind of authoritarian dictator, kind of evil person. That is not correct. Let me just say I disagree with them completely. No, I don't think when Nietzsche is talking about, when he says Superman, I don't believe he's talking about some authoritarian dictator. That is nonsense, superficial interpretation. I think what Nietzsche is talking about is he's trying to tell you how you can be a better human being, better individual. And in Nietzsche's view, to be a better individual, to be a Superman, means that you really need to think for yourself. You need to think alone. So, for example, when you're looking at the charts, who cares what other people think? Richard Feynman, a fantastic scientist, he wrote a book. I think he calls the book, What Do You Care What Other People Think? So even scientists, guys, if you look at the history of music, science, art, they've all been people who are focused on their own thinking. Now, of course, they do borrow from other people's thinking too. They're influenced by other people. But at the end of the day, what makes you creative, what makes you a fantastic individual or person is somebody who does not need validation or approval from other people. So what Nietzsche is saying in this book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and when he calls it the Superman, again, he's talking about the way you can be a better individual, a great individual, is by really thinking for yourself, being independent. By all means, listen to experts, listen to specialized opinion, but at the end of the day, guys, you have to make decisions for yourself. So when it comes to interpretation of the charts, it does not matter what the majority opinion is. It doesn't matter what the herd is thinking. The herd, remember guys, the herd is usually on the wrong side. Let me show you this chart. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I showed this chart to our members, and I showed that this is the chart of dumb money. Dumb money got so scared, they pulled out of the market. And guys, get this, the dumb money, they got out. They exited the market exactly right about this point right here, when the market essentially reversed direction and went higher. So again, it's always a good idea to see what other people are thinking, not because you want to follow them, you know, not following the herd, but simply because you want to go against the herd. So if the herd is extremely panicking, if they're afraid, you want to do the opposite. That's why, guys, if you look back at my previous videos, and I kept saying this over and over again, I kept saying, look, I'm expecting this market to reverse direction soon. And I said the herd is on the wrong side of the market. By the way, guys, before I finish the video, let me just say two things. Firstly, I'm doing a live webinar this Sunday afternoon. And I'm going to discuss how we can know whether this market actually has bottomed or whether we're going to see another major crash lower. So I'm going to go into this in an hour-long webinar. All right, guys, so this is not something we just talk about in a few minutes in a video. I want to talk about this with you in much more detail in this hour-long webinar. So we're going to discuss this financial market situation, talk about what's going on in the economy, and also Bitcoin as well, and gold and currencies. And again, in this video, we'll discuss whether this market has bottomed or are we about to see another major crash going lower. That's on a Sunday webinar. Join me on that in the members live webinar. If you're not a member, you can become a member on that link there. And guys, before I finish the video, I'm going to leave you with the fantastic music of Richard Strauss. This piece of music, again, I mentioned before, has the same name as this book because it was written for this book. Thus spoke Zarathustra, or Also sprach Zarathustra. So guys, I hope you like it. Bye for now.